Welcome to Metropolitan Community College's Veterans Day ceremony. I am James Hawthorne, Director of TRIO Veterans Upward Bound here at Metropolitan Community College, and a proud military veteran of the United States Army. Thank you for participating in today's observance. I would also like to introduce Daniel Moore, Director of the college's Veterans and Military Resource Center and a proud 30-year Air Force veteran.
Thank you, James. Recognition of the sacrifice of our nation's service members is a longstanding tradition of the college. We will begin today's ceremony with a brief video presentation to honor and recognize the sacrifice of those Americans who have been prisoners of war and to remind us of those who are still missing in action and their families who patiently wait.
You may have noticed a table at the front, raised to call your attention to its purpose. It is reserved to honor our missing comrades in arms. Set for 5, the empty places represent our men and women still missing from each of the 5 services: Army, Marine Corps, Navy, Air Force, and Coast Guard. This honors ceremony symbolizes that they are with us here in spirit. Some were very young when they went into combat. However, all Americans should never forget the brave men and women who answered our nation's call and served the cause of freedom in a special way. The table is round to show our everlasting concern for our missing men and women. The tablecloth is white, symbolizing the purity of their motives when answering the call of duty. The single red rose, displayed in a vase, reminds us of the life of each of the missing and the loved ones and friends of these Americans who keep the faith, awaiting answers. A slice of lemon on the bread plate is to remind us of the bitter fate of those captured and missing in a foreign land. A pinch of salt symbolizes the tears endured by those missing and their families who seek answers. The glass is inverted to symbolize their inability to share in a toast. The chair is empty. They are missing. Let us honor America's prisoners of war and those missing in action, and to the success of our efforts to account for them.
At this time, Papillion La Vista South High School Navy Junior Reserve Officer Training Corps Color Guard will present the colors, and Senior Airman Aaliyah Riching from the United States Air Force Heartland of America Band will sing our national anthem.
Up, bird, march. Colors, halt. Bridge, and colors.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Air, red, colors. Ready, hot, order, colors. Ready? Up. Up. Base. Fire. Ready. Colors. Ready. Up. Forward. March.
I would like to recognize our distinguished visitors. From Metro's Board of Governors, our college president, Randy Schmazel, and any public officials who are present this morning, we welcome you. At this time, we will have a special message from President Schmazel.
Joining us for today's ceremony. With all that's going on in the world around us, it is important to have official events like this one. To take the time to pause, reflect, and appreciate what we have in this great nation of ours. When we take time to reflect, the magnitude of what we owe to our veterans becomes abundantly clear. It is in this spirit of appreciation that we come together today to honor all those who have served and those who are currently serving in the military. Metro Community College is fortunate to have over 400 veterans as students. On behalf of all of us at Metro, thank you for your demonstration of patriotism and your dedication to keeping our nation safe through your service. I encourage those who are not veterans to take a moment to recognize and thank the veterans that are around you, those in your classroom, workplaces, and let them know how much you value their service. Thanks again for joining us. Enjoy the Veterans Day event.
Thank you, President Schmazel, for your remarks. As we continue, on May 13th, 1938, Congress approved an act making the 11th day of November of each year a legal holiday, a day to be dedicated to the cause of world peace and to be thereafter celebrated and known as Armistice Day. Armistice Day was primarily established to honor the veterans of World War I, but after 1954, World War II and the Korean conflict, Congress amended the Act of 1938 by striking through the word armistice and replacing it with veterans, thereby making November 11th a day to honor all veterans. However, for 7 days in the 1970s, Veterans Day was not celebrated on November 11th, but instead on a Monday in late October or early November in order to create a 3-day weekend for government employees. Many states and veteran organizations did not agree with this change and continued to celebrate Veterans Day on the original date. Recognizing the historical and patriotic aspect of November 11th, President Ford signed a public law returning the Veterans Day observance to November 11th. Veterans Day is a day to honor veterans for their patriotism, love of country, willingness to serve and sacrifice for the common good. A day to honor and salute all veterans for their commitment to the ideals and principles that our forefathers established over 240 years ago.
I would like to invite the veterans in attendance today to raise their hand when your branch of service is announced in precedence. Ladies and gentlemen, the veterans of the United States Army, Army Reserve, and National Guard. Veterans of the United States Marine Corps and Marine Reserve. Veterans of the United States Navy and Navy Reserve. Veterans of the United States Air Force, Air Force Reserve, and Air National Guard. Veterans of the United States Coast Guard. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in thanking these men and women for their service to our great country. At this time, the Associate Vice President of Equity and Inclusion here at Metropolitan Community College will introduce our keynote speaker.
Thank you. It is my honor to introduce our speaker for today's ceremony. Horace Greeley Dawson Jr. was born in Augusta, Georgia, and attended Lincoln University in Pennsylvania for 2 years before being drafted into the United States Army, serving a 2-year tour of duty in Europe and the Philippines. Dawson then returned to Lincoln University to finish his studies, earning a bachelor's degree in English. He went on to study English and comparative literature at Columbia University and received his master's degree the following year. He taught English at Southern University and North Carolina Central University, where he worked as an associate professor of English and director of public relations. He also received his Ph.D. from the University of Iowa. In 1962, he entered the Foreign Service, working as a cultural affairs officer in Uganda and Nigeria, and then as the United States Information Agency Director in Liberia. From 1973 to 1977, Dawson held a prominent position as the director of all American information and cultural programs in Africa. Subsequently, Dawson became the counselor of embassy for public affairs and the director of American information and cultural programs in the Philippines, where he remained until 1979. That year, he was named ambassador to Botswana by President Jimmy Carter. As ambassador, he worked to end apartheid in South Africa. Returning to the United States in 1983, Dawson remained with the State Department until his retirement in 1989. He then joined the faculty at Howard University and was appointed director of the Public Affairs Program. In 1993, he established the Ralph J. Bunche International Affairs Center at Howard, and in 1997 became the director of that program as well. He is a member of the Peace Corps Advisory Board, chairman of the Selection Committee for the Franklin H. Williams Memorial Internship Program of the Council of Foreign Relations, and recently ended his term as the chairman of the Association of Black American Ambassadors. Listed in Who's Who in America, Dawson has written extensively on the topics of mass media and international affairs. Dawson is a lifetime member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated and is the chairman of the fraternity's World Policy Council, a think tank whose purpose is to expand Alpha Phi Alpha's involvement in politics and social and current policy to encompass international concerns. Ladies and gentlemen and veterans, I present to you Ambassador Horace G. Dawson, Ph.D.
Well, thank you very much, and good morning, Metropolitan. It's an honor and a pleasure for me to be a part of such an elaborate observance of Veterans Day. As you know from the introduction by now, I am myself one of those veterans. I have been one for a very long time, qualifying to be called that for many years ago. I dare say I became a veteran before the parents of most of the students here were born. And if I sound as though I am bragging about being a veteran, I suppose I am. You see, my father was a veteran all the way back to 1918 when he came home from World War I. World War II made both my older brother and me veterans, and Korea did so for my younger brother. In short, there were 4 of us males in this nuclear family, and each in his time wore the uniform of the US Army. My older brother in Italy, and I in Britain and the Philippines. With your kind permission, I'd like to dedicate anything I may say here of note to my father. He served in France in World War I, which was often referred to, as you know, as the war to end all wars. I grew up looking at my father's uniform hanging behind the door in the second bedroom with the gas mask hanging alongside it. He, my father, did not parade in that uniform, as so many veterans did in those days, but I watched him as he looked at it on those special occasions, very solemnly and saying not a word. As time progressed, he belonged to every veterans organization he could, especially including the American Legion and the Veterans of Foreign Wars. To my father and his generation, and to my generation as well, November the 11th was as you have heard, was a solemn occasion, starting out to recognize the end of World War I and also honoring all of those who had died in that war. Over time, November 11 became known as Armistice Day. And as you know, was so designated by the Congress, as you have heard, in 1938. That is when veterans of the war came to be among those also honored officially, along with those who had died. I remember as a high school student and as a Boy Scout, rising from our benches, coming to attention, and perhaps saluting the flag as church bells rang and whistles and horns sounded throughout the city. All this began at precisely 11 o'clock on the 11th day of November, which of course is the 11th month. All this, as I have said, signaling the end of the war to end all wars. As it turned out, World War I did not end all wars. Soon there was World War II, which Red Fox referred to as the big one. And after that, Korea. Along the way, honoring the participants in war, the veterans came to be recognized as the primary objective of the November 11th observance. Thus, after change in the dates and so on, and a few other changes, November the 11th was declared officially Veterans Day in 1954. President Eisenhower signed the bill and called upon all Americans to observe that day, this day, in honor of veterans. Our nation is paying tribute today to veterans, to men and women who at one time or another wore a uniform of one kind or another of our several services and dedicated their lives to keeping us safe, to safeguarding our country. We are hugely indebted to them. And so I ask you on this Veterans Day 2021 to observe a brief interval of silence in honor of the men and women who have defended and protected us through their service. And now, having presented something of the history of Veterans Day, I have decided to talk briefly about an individual who well symbolized it. I shall be brief. I've been admonished to be brief. On the morning of Monday, October the 18th, 2021, this nation was stunned by the news of the passing of General Colin Luther Powell, an individual out of the spotlight for the past few years, but certainly not so much so earlier on. By choice, he was a soldier, a man who rose through the ranks to become one of the most famous individuals of this or any other generation. And by so doing, he also epitomized the American dream. Why not a few words about this individual, this great and good man, this veteran on Veterans Day? Of course, Powell was best known as a soldier. Despite his several other positions in later years, he himself said he preferred being referred to by his military title. As you all know, Powell was the son of immigrants from Jamaica who came to this country and to New York for the usual reason. They wanted to have a better life. Employed in the downtown garment industry, the couple lived in Harlem, where Colin was born on April the 5th, 1937, and moved 4 years later to the South Bronx, where Colin and his older sister grew up. After graduating from Morris High School, he attended CCNY, the City College of New York, majoring in geology. In his best-selling autobiography, Powell, My American Journey, Powell admitted his academic grades were not the best, but that he excelled in the ROTC program, where he led the precision drill team and reached the highest rank in the ROTC, cadet colonel. He entered the services as a second lieutenant in 1958, and by 1963 was in Vietnam. A year or so later, he returned to Vietnam for a second tour before coming back to Washington for studies at Georgetown University. I shall resist the temptation to chronicle Powell's step-by-step advancement through the ranks of the military. Suffice it to say, it was swift and remarkable, punctuated by assignments on the field and in Washington, abroad and at home, in rapid succession. In 1973, for example, he commanded an infantry battalion in South Korea, followed by a year at the National War College, and after that headed a brigade of the 101st Airborne at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, before becoming special assistant to various high-level officials in the Pentagon. When he earned his first star in 1979, Powell was the youngest brigadier general in the United States Army. By this time, he was already well known throughout the military for his gallantry, his advocacy of strong support for the troops, the expansion of training opportunities, and of course, for his rapid rise. Whether simply as an admirer, mentor, colleague, or friend, his associates in Washington included luminaries as Defense Secretary Caspar Weinberger and Frank Carlucci, National Security Advisor Donald Rumsfeld, and in varying degrees, Vice President Cheney and President George W. Bush himself. At one time or another, General Powell came to work for and or with each of these luminaries that I mentioned. Awarded his second star in 1982, General Powell went on to earn 2 more prior to his retirement in 1993. Along the way, he made history as the first person of color to serve as this country's national security advisor, as chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and as Secretary of State. He was, of course, a civilian, a veteran in that last office, Secretary of State, serving as this nation's top diplomat. He was known and admired around the world. And he certainly was known one entry night a short time ago when his car had a flat tire on Highway I-195 outside of Washington, D.C. And General Powell, en route to Walter Reed Hospital, was having trouble changing the tire. A man drove up, identified himself, and did the job for the general. He was white, a military veteran of the war in Afghanistan, and had an artificial leg. This veteran, Anthony Maggott, revealed later on that he had read widely on Powell, followed his career, and admired him greatly. General Powell, Maggott wrote later, You were the giant on whose shoulders we stood upon to carry the torch, to light the way. And now it is tomorrow's generation that must do the same. In his reply, General Powell thanked McGirt. Yes, we all must go on taking care of each other, the general wrote. Powell had said to himself when he first met, and as McGirt stopped and volunteered to assist him on the highway, it occurred to me, he said, that this is what America is all about. Here on this Veterans Day, I have quoted 2 American veterans, different races, different backgrounds, occupations, and for all we know, of different political persuasions. What we do know, however, is that they have in common this country, which they both love, and a sense of the defense of it, which they share. Differences in ideology, of politics may exist and could well be reconcilable. However, such differences can be argued and endured respectfully without the resort to violence. This is the America we know, veterans and non-veterans alike. And it is this country, it is the country so wonderfully exhibited and lauded by Powell and McGirt as they met. On this day, set aside for veterans, we honor and thank them and the millions of others who have served. May I be allowed to pay special tribute to the veterans of World War II. According to the Veterans Administration, there are approximately 300,000 of them alive today, 300,000 of us. They are predominantly in their 90s. I myself am 95. The oldest living veteran, we are told, and I am told, is one from World War II, is a gentleman living in New Orleans, and he is said to be 112 years old. The total veterans around the world includes about 18 million men and women scattered in all 50 states and territories of these United States. In declaring November the 11th, once again, Veterans Day in 1954, the president reemphasized 2 indispensable aspects of the observance: paying tribute to those who have died in the cause of liberty, and honoring all who have served. In addition to those things, he invited all Americans to rededicate themselves to the cause of peace. I very much appreciate your inviting me here today to celebrate and honor with you these sacred objectives. May they forever resound. And I thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador Dawson, for your inspirational and enlightening remarks and your reflection of General Powell. As we continue our ceremony, one of the most important parts of a military member's life is their family. The defense of our nation, in part, can be attributed to the support of the family that military members receive. Senior military leaders want us to know 2 things. First, support the troops. Second, support the families of the troops. If there's a troop who is deployed and is concerned about their family when they go on a mission, that concern could get them hurt or killed. We need them to be focused on the mission. Families play a huge role in mission success of a military member and that member's unit. For example, Margaret Corbin served alongside her husband during the Revolutionary War and handled ammunition for a cannon after her husband was fatally wounded. Since that time, families have contributed to the defense of the nation in many ways, whether it's being there just to listen or keeping things going at home. You can see the pride in the faces of the parents, the spouses, siblings, and children when they see how their family members make a difference in the world today. So along with recognizing our veterans today, please take a moment to thank their family members who played an essential part in their military success.
Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Board of Governors and the President of Metropolitan Community College, I would like to thank you for attending today. Please stay safe, be well, and again, to all the veterans, happy Veterans Day.